HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Wondrous Workings of Planet Earth, Understanding Our World and Its Ecosystems, by Rachel Ignotofsky. Read by Sarah Mollo-Christensen. The big world we live in is smaller than you think. Introduction. As you read this page, a jaguar is on the hunt in the Amazon rainforest. A coral reef teems with life, and a bike messenger in New York City is riding with a bagel in hand. These all might seem like unrelated events, but in fact, all living things have more in common than you think. For starters, we all live on planet Earth. Together, plants, animals, and people spin through outer space, protected only by a thin layer of atmosphere. Second, everything on Earth, and I mean everything, your dog, car, spaghetti dinner, and even you, is made up of atoms. Last, all living things, no matter how small or big, whether it is a plant turning sunlight into sugar or a person eating a sandwich, build their bodies and get energy from their food. Every living thing is dependent on the Earth's limited resources and each other for survival. To see just how much we are connected, we need to understand the Earth's ecosystems. Exactly how life on our planet works is a complicated question. The world can feel so large. What if you could comprehend the complex workings of a massive forest as easily as you could learn how to care for a houseplant? What if our whole planet was as easy to understand as a specimen in a bottle or a globe on a desk? You could watch the winds blow nutrient-rich dust from the Sahara across the Atlantic Ocean, where it fertilizes the Amazon rainforest. Those same trees in the Amazon release massive amounts of oxygen into the air. Those oxygen molecules mix with the atmosphere, which is then breathed by animals and people all around the world. The story could continue without end. In this book, we'll take a close look at how some of our world's largest and smallest ecosystems work, and how the natural world fits together to support life on Earth. Looking at planet Earth, you will also see people. Throughout human history, we have transformed the landscape in both good and bad ways. You will see people taking care of the land they live on, like shepherds in the Scottish moors digging ditches to keep the bogs moist. You'll see how people build in ways that take wildlife into account. In Kenya, people construct underpasses beneath highways so that elephants can continue their annual migrations across the grasslands. You will see scientists, governments, and communities come together to create protected areas that preserve nature. However, you will also see how humans have used the land in ways that hurt the natural world. Humanity's biggest challenge is learning to use our resources responsibly. As there are more and more people living on Earth, it becomes a smaller and smaller place. Farms need to be bigger, and cities need to keep growing. But as we continue to build, we cannot afford to disrupt the natural benefits that Earth's irreplaceable ecosystems provide. Irresponsible mismanagement of land and the rapid overuse of our resources result in pollution, climate change, and the destruction of our important ecosystems, which in turn makes it harder for humans, and all other life on Earth, to thrive. The first step to protecting our planet is to learn more about it. With a true understanding of the natural world, we can take from the Earth without destroying it. Together, we can find new ways to farm, generate energy, and invent new materials to build with. But we cannot expect people to care for our planet if they cannot care for themselves. Often, poor communities depend on harmful or illegal practices like poaching or lumber exploitation. By addressing poverty and creating better ways to farm and build, we can give all people the means to preserve our Earth. Our planet is the only home we have. It is precious and needs our care. The power to protect our Earth rests with each of us. You could say that the world's future is truly in the palms of your hands. Levels of ecological organization. Biosphere. Everywhere life on Earth is found. 2. Biome, a region defined by a specific climate, its temperature and precipitation, and certain types of animals and plants that have adapted to survive and thrive in that specific climate. 2. Ecosystem, the interactions between all the living organisms and their non-living environment in a certain place. 2. Community, all of the living beings within an ecosystem, such as plants, fungi, animals, and bacteria. Does not include the air, dirt, water, or other non-living things. 2. Population, a group of individuals of the same species that live within the same community. 2. Individual, one specific living organism. It is a great, big, complicated world out there. You can study the entire planet as a whole or study the habits of just a single organism. The levels of ecology put it all into context. The largest level is the biosphere, which includes everywhere life is found on Earth. With every level of ecology down from the biosphere, we zoom in and look at sequentially smaller and more specific parts of the world. The smallest level of ecology is an individual living thing. For example, just one single squirrel. The levels of ecology are like Russian nesting dolls, with each level fitting inside the next largest level. Biomes are simply a way to classify and describe general parts of the planet. Each biome is determined by its temperature and precipitation and the living things that have evolved in that climate. There are two main types of biomes, terrestrial and aquatic. Ecologists have further broken down those two types into more specific classifications. Biome maps can be divided up in many different ways and allow us to understand the similarities between places on opposite sides of the world. Trophic levels, an organism's position in the food web and how far away it is from the original source of energy, the sun, starting with producers and typically ending with apex predators. Who eats what? Producers make their own food from solar energy. Herbivores eat only plants. Carnivores eat only other animals. Omnivores eat both plants and animals. Decomposers eat waste and dead organisms. Food web, the mapping of the flow of energy. Who eats what and who gets energy from whom. Arrows point to who is enjoying a tasty meal, which is the direction the energy is moving. All energy for life starts at the sun. Some microscopic life gets its energy from thermal vents. What is an ecosystem? Not even a lone wolf is a lone wolf. Every organism on the planet is dependent on others to live. Through ecology, the study of ecosystems, we can begin to understand how we rely on the natural world. Ecosystems can come in many sizes, from a large forest to a tiny puddle, and through the study of ecosystems we begin to understand how living organisms in a certain place interact with each other. Who eats what? Who will compete with whom and for what resources? We can also understand how these living things interact with the non-living parts of their environment, like the soil, the temperature, the air, and the water. Interactions between wildlife and their environment provide us with important natural services. Ecosystems large and small are responsible for breathable air, fresh water, protection from natural disasters, fertile soil, and, of course, food. By understanding ecosystems, we can see how energy from the sun flows through the food web, and how the cycle of life, death, and decay allows nutrients to be reused. Only when our ecosystems are intact can the natural world continue to seamlessly do the hard work of sustaining life on planet Earth. The flow of energy. Matter, which makes up our bodies and everything else, can never be destroyed or created. It cycles, transforms, and is constantly reused. Energy works differently. New solar energy constantly flows into our planet's ecosystems and is then used up and lost forever in the form of heat. Living things don't just eat each other to get the vital nutrients they need to grow strong. Food is also about gaining energy. Almost all of the energy for life originally comes from the sun. Plants and algae, also known as producers, can turn sunlight into sugar through a process called photosynthesis. Sugar is a form of chemical energy that is stored. During the complicated process of cells doing work, energy is released and lost as heat. Plants use around 90% of the original stored energy that they make. Living takes work. Only about 10% of the original sunlight energy remains stored as sugar. When a plant is eaten, this stored sugar energy begins its own journey through the food web. Producers are at the bottom of a food web and hold the most stored energy. As you move up the food web, from producers to primary and secondary consumers and so on, more of that original energy is used up, and less energy as a percentage of food mass is passed along. That means that an apex predator, which is at the top of a food web, needs to eat much more than a primary consumer to get the same amount of energy. The classification of living things. Taxonomic ranking helps scientists classify and identify different species. Scientists include every single living thing that has ever existed on Earth, which allows us to see how life on Earth has evolved and what different species have in common, even if they have been extinct for thousands of years or live on opposite sides of the world. Levels of classification. Domain, Eukarya. Kingdom, Animalia. Phylum, Chordata. Class, Mammalia. Order, Perissodactyla. Family, Equidae. Genus, Equus. Species, zebra. The main domains. Bacteria, single-celled organisms with no defined nucleus. Archaea, single-celled organisms with no defined nucleus and different biochemistry than bacteria. Eukarya, organisms that have cells with a nucleus. Animalia, Plantae, Fungi, Protista. How living things interact. You may have seen a lion chase a zebra in a TV documentary, but that is just one way animals interact with each other. Competing for food and resources, finding a place to call home, and reproducing are some of the main priorities for all species. To do so, animals, bacteria, and plants have evolved to interact in many different ways to survive. These interactions help to maintain a balanced and healthy ecosystem. Predation. One species eats the other. Interspecific competition. Different species competing for the same resources. Intraspecific competition. The same species competing for the same resources. Parasitism. One species gains by harming the other species. Mutualism. Both species gain something from each other. Commensalism. One species gains and the other is unaffected. Resource partitioning. Two species indirectly compete for the same resource by developing different niches or behaviors. What makes a healthy ecosystem? Floods, tornadoes, fires, disease. The animals and plants in any ecosystem have to deal with a lot of challenges. A healthy and intact ecosystem is adaptable and can bounce back from terrible natural disasters, changes, and challenges. Biodiversity. A biodiverse ecosystem is home to many different types of animals, plants, and other living things. Biodiversity is the most important factor in having a strong and healthy ecosystem. When an ecosystem is biodiverse, wildlife have more opportunities to obtain food and shelter. Biodiversity also means a more complex food web and more paths for matter to cycle, decompose, and create topsoil for new plant growth. Different species also react and respond to changes in their environment differently. For example, imagine a forest with only one type of plant in it, which is the only source of food and habitat for the entire forest food web. Now, there is a sudden dry season and this plant dies. Plant-eating animals completely lose their food source and die out, and so do the animals that prey upon them. But when there is biodiversity, the effects of a sudden change are not so dramatic. Different species of plants respond to the drought differently, and many can survive a dry season. Many animals have a variety of food sources and don't just rely on one plant. Now, our forest ecosystem is no longer doomed. Changes, disturbance, or even disasters in nature are inevitable. Some disturbances will deeply affect an ecosystem and can thin out or kill off a species of microbe, plant, or animal. But an ecosystem with intact biodiversity will have many other species that can survive, allowing the ecosystem as a whole to bounce back. The less biodiversity there is, the weaker an ecosystem is. Niche. A living thing's role in an ecosystem, what its habitat is and how it gets food, reproduces, and interacts with others, is its niche. If two different species have the same niche, then they are in direct competition. As in any competition, only one can dominate, and the losing species will die out if they do not change or adapt. Keystone species. Certain ecosystems have a type of animal or plant that almost the entire community depends on directly or indirectly. If a keystone species population is reduced or compromised, it could mean the end of an entire ecosystem. It is important for us to identify and protect these important keystone species. Species evenness. What would happen if there were more wolves than rabbits in the forest? The wolves would eat all the rabbits before the next generation of rabbits could be born. Species evenness between predator and prey stops this from happening. If any living thing higher on the food chain outnumbers its food source, then a whole species could be eaten to extinction. By measuring species populations, ecologists can make sure that an ecosystem is balanced and intact. Animals on the same trophic level also need to have species evenness between each other. If there are too many rabbits in an ecosystem, there may not be enough grass for other primary consumer species to survive. Also, if a disease, like rabbit fever, hits and there is only one species, rabbits in this case, on a trophic level, then all of the larger predators will die out too because they have no other food source. Understanding species populations lets people hunt in ways that actually benefit an ecosystem. Maintaining species evenness is crucial to maintaining biodiversity. If there are too many limiting factors in an ecosystem, like predators, lack of resources, bad weather, or disease, then a population will die out completely. If there are not enough limiting factors and life becomes too easy for a species, then a population will boom out of control. This can lead to one species outcompeting all other living things until the biodiversity of the region is destroyed and resources are overused or even depleted. Edges. The edges of an ecosystem are just as important as its core parts. The area where two distinctly different biomes or ecosystems blend together is called an ecotone. You may have seen an ecotone where a forest blends into grassland, or where the bank of a river divides the water from the land. These ecotones blend two different biomes together, but also act as a border, repelling and attracting different types of animals. Ecotones protect the mainland from erosion, protect core ecosystems from invasive species, and protect certain animals with unique resources. Often, ecotones are the perfect places for hiding, reproducing, or protecting baby animals before they fully mature and enter their main habitat. Some animals and plants have evolved to live only in or very close to ecotones. They are called edge species. The other species that can live only in the core of an ecosystem depend on the edge as a border. All core ecosystems are surrounded by some kind of ecotone or edge region. When people construct roads or buildings without considering the crucial edges of ecosystems, they can shrink and damage the core wilderness more than they intend. Succession. Change can be good. From the time life began on planet Earth, there have been many changes. The Earth has had many eras with different dominant species. From the mass extinction of the dinosaurs to the building of massive cities, life finds a way to adapt to even the most dramatic changes. Primary succession is the way plants colonize and create soil from barren wastelands. Secondary succession is how ecosystems adapt to small and medium-sized disturbances in their environment. Small natural disturbances sometimes can actually create stronger and more resilient ecosystems. For example, a small or medium-sized wildfire will destroy a part of the forest. The burned area becomes a new microclimate for other smaller plants. New grasses, wildflowers, and bushes will grow over the area, creating new types of habitat. This allows for more biodiversity, a variety of wildlife, throughout the forest, which makes for a more resilient ecosystem. Some ecosystems have even evolved to depend on these kinds of intermediate disturbances, such as wildfires, floods, or seasonal frost. Big or small, disturbances are inevitable for all ecosystems. Disturbances can be as small as a truck parked on a lawn or as destructive as the volcanic Permian-Triassic extinction event which killed over 70% of life on Earth about 250 million years ago. As far as we know, life has always bounced back from such disturbances. The only difference is how long it takes to recover. The greater the disturbance, the longer it takes for life to return. Sometimes recovery can take millions of years. The expanding human population has been hard on our planet. The increase of pollution and the expansion of cities are transforming the Earth in ways that are causing animal and plant species to go extinct at a rapid pace. Some scientists think that this human transformation of the land will be the next great extinction level event for many species. We share the planet with wildlife. And as humanity continues to build, we need to be conscious of the disturbances we impose on other species. Primary succession. Pioneer species populate a place with no life and transform the soil or the water into a place that can support life. Wasteland. A volcano erupts, a meteor hits, or land is paved over. Now there is a lifeless environment. Life can return quickly, or it can take hundreds to millions of years. 2. Pioneer species. Weather like rain normalizes the land. The wind brings hardy bacteria and microscopic plants, and spores like those of lichen, moss, and algae. They live and die, and over time, soil begins to form. 2. Fertile soil. Barren rocks are broken down by time, and the life cycle of these pioneer species begin to make fertile soil where small plants can begin to grow. Secondary succession. This happens after primary succession, but also happens constantly in response to disturbances that don't completely destroy the land. Forest example. Primary succession is complete, soil is present, and some plants and seeds have found a home. Or, after a disturbance, soil is still intact and some seeds and plants remain. To grass, to shrubs, to young forest, to mature forest. Micro-ecosystems. By zooming in and out to examine ecosystems of all sizes, we can better understand how our natural world works. Large ecosystems are often made up of many smaller communities and ecosystems that sometimes even have their own microclimates. The living and non-living things that share these microhabitats may interact with life from the larger ecosystems that they are also a part of. For example, a pond, which is an enclosed ecosystem on its own, also provides drinking water and food to animals that are part of a larger forest. Small ecosystems make larger ecosystems more stable by creating far more resources and more biodiversity. Microscopic ecosystems. Scientists estimate that there are over 1 trillion species of microbes on Earth. Just look at a drop of water under a microscope and you will see a whole world teeming with life. Microbes are everywhere, floating all around us, on our skin, our food, and the dirt on our shoes, and in the air we breathe. But don't get grossed out. We need microbes more than they need us. We rely on these tiny creatures to sustain all life on Earth, from creating the air we breathe to the food we eat. Microscopic plants called phytoplankton are the basis of the marine food web. All the life in the ocean depends on them. In turn, plant life in the ocean generates over half of all the oxygen on the Earth. The rest comes from terrestrial plants. As if that was not enough, microbes are also important decomposers that turn dead plants and animals into fertile soil. In this new soil, new plants grow, which in turn sustain animal and human life. Microbes and bacteria are key for the cycling of vital nutrients like carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus throughout the global ecosystem. Without these microbes, there would be no life on Earth. Bacteria and other microbes are often the first type of life that can colonize inhospitable areas, turning depleted wastelands into lush ecosystems that can support more life. Ecologists can use their knowledge of microorganism ecology to help revitalize areas that seem to be barren. Microorganisms may seem like they are in a world of their own, but our world would not exist without them. North America. North America extends from freezing and icy Greenland to warm and lush Panama. This continent has been called the New World, and its history and legacy have shaped the path of human history. The first people to live in North America were Asiatic people, over 10,000 to 20,000 years ago. Many archaeologists have found evidence that a large nomadic tribe traveled on foot over an ancient, now non-existent, bridge of land that connected Siberia to North America. Over thousands of years and many generations, a population of people spread from the tip of the Arctic Circle all the way down to South America, creating many different nations, cultures, and tribes along the way. Only a few of these once numerous indigenous communities still exist today. In the 1500s, there was a wave of exploration from the European continent, led by Portugal and Spain. In fact, the name America comes from the Italian explorer Amerigo Vespucci, who was part of the first wave European exploration. This new discovery for Europe was followed by the conquest and colonization of North America and violent subjugation of its indigenous people. With these human invaders also came new species of bacteria, animals, and plants, which transformed and in many cases destroyed certain ecosystems. The negative effects of colonization are still felt today by the surviving indigenous communities. The New World offered opportunities to colonizing Europeans away from the strict class system of the Old World. With them came not only invasive species, but also drastic changes in the types of agriculture production of the land. From the 1700s to today, waves of immigrants have traveled to North America in search of opportunity, bringing plants and animals from their old homes with them. Although the introduction of new wildlife can cause great harm and unbalance an ecosystem, sometimes introducing a new species can provide.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?